business, resulting in its closure. For the first 3 years working there, I met many fellow managers and store owners. There was one owner in particular, Tony, that left me with an unsettling feeling every time we crossed paths. Before I lost my job, he had the daily routine of spewing inappropriate sexual remarks about my body. Eventually needing a new employer, I ventured to our mall in hopes of finding one. Tony stopped me in between filling out applications and offered a position repairing jewelry at his shop. I've had a difficulty in the past dealing with awkward situations, saying no in particular. I'd often use my beating around the bush antics, this instance not being an exception. With the inability to say fuck off, it led us into an uncomfortable conversation where Tony discussed topics ranging from friends, family, and somehow eventually to drugs. I suppose Tony figured I dabbed in them before, as he spoke about the variety of shit he'd done back in the day. He asked me, "Do you smoke weed?" I paused for a moment considering how I should answer, but wound up blurting out, "Of course." Tony took my response as an indication it was okay to ask other personal questions. "Do you have a boyfriend?" "Yes." "Where do you live?" he asked. With my parents." He declared himself one of the more well-known pot and coke dealers in our vicinity. My facial expression had given me a fucking break, blatantly written all over it. But this didn't stop him from babbling away. He abruptly paused mid-sentence, then spouts, "Hey, you could move in with me. I have a spare bedroom. I'd hook you up with any drug you want. No charge. Don't you have a wife?" "Oh, the woman you've seen around? She's just my assistant." "Yeah, okay." I noticed he and his assistant wearing matching wedding bands throughout the years. "I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'll let you know. My ride is here." Why didn't I just say no? I left him with a glimmer of hope. So stupid on my part. Basically sprinting through the mall, I made a quick glance behind me and realized Tony closed his shop for the day. Almost immediately after leaving, an influx of private calls came in, followed by one single text message. It reads, "It's Tony. I need to know if you plan on moving in so I can kick my roommate out." Repulsed, it dawned on me that I never gave him my number. I never filled out an application for employment either. He had absolutely no way of getting this information. I didn't respond, thinking it would be enough of a hint that I wasn't interested. After several days, Tony hadn't even crossed my mind. I foolishly swept him under the rug and moved on until some random Thursday. "I know what you really want, motherfucker." Vicariously, we watch. "Get the fuck out of here now." I ran as quickly as I could into our living room. My father began scowling, asking if I knew a 50-something-year-old man named Tony, because he had just came looking for me. Trying to explain the situation leading up to that point, his anger towards me shifted into fear for my safety. It was apparent that Tony had followed me, likely the day he made his offer. Now, at least someone other than myself was aware of him. One early morning, I was given a ride home by my boyfriend before he headed to a job site, and while exiting his vehicle, I noticed every car parked in the driveway had their windows smashed. Every single window. Finally, we involved the police. I didn't know any information outside of where Tony worked, so officers made their way to the mall. Of course, he had conveniently taken off that day, but his assistant was available for questioning instead. Obviously, Tony's claims of being a notorious drug dealer were false, and his assistant was actually his wife. I assume he had planned to kick her out and attempt to move me in as her replacement. 6 years later, I have no solid indication that Tony was responsible for the damaged windows, although it's unlikely a coincidence. Police never arrested him due to lack of evidence. Even after what happened, I continued on my quest to find work at the mall. It wasn't long until Tony found me, but before I could mutter a single word, he screamed, "She was only my assistant!" I slowly backed up, turned around and bolted to an exit. I'm still unsure why. Of all things he could have said, that was what he chose. My search for employment was taken elsewhere, and I have since learned how to say no. Number 2. This happened in 1979, when I was a 17-year-old girl. I was in London for summer school and stayed with a family friend, Jane, in her apartment. One night, I went to a party and ended up staying really late. Being a poor student, I decided to bus home and got off at the closest bus stop to the apartment, which was still a good 20 to 30 minute walk. By then it was after midnight and the streets were completely empty. I walked down the street hearing nothing but the sound of my shoes clapping against the pavement. I noticed this guy come out of one of the houses up the street. He was walking towards me on the same side of the road. We passed each other without incident. I continued walking down the dimly lit streets, turning my head to see behind me at one point, and I saw the same guy, only now he was walking behind me, keeping his distance, not wanting to assume he was following me or show any fear. I looked straight ahead and increased my walking speed a bit. After 10 long minutes of walking down several deserted blocks, I finally turned back the dark corner onto my street. There was still about 5 minutes left to walk. I stole one more glance behind me. There he was, still keeping his distance. In that moment, it became quite clear that he was following me. A sense of dread spread through me on the dark, lonely street as I tried to remain calm and just get home as soon as possible. The apartment was part of a complex, and the front door was located at the back, so you had to go around to get to it. This meant that if I was fast enough, there was a good chance he wouldn't see which apartment was mine. I walked as fast as I could without running, finally reached the front door. No sight of him, thank God. With the key in my badly shaking hand, I fumbled at the doorknob, terrified, praying to get it open before he finds me, and I'm never seen or heard from again. My prayers were answered, and I managed to unlock it finally. I hurried inside and locked the door behind me. Safe and able to breathe again, I went upstairs to my bedroom. Then, I made a mistake. My bedroom faced the street, and when I entered, I turned on the light. The curtains weren't drawn, and I saw him standing there looking straight up at me. Next thing you know, he's ringing the doorbell. Panicking, I ran downstairs into Jane's room, who was woken up by the doorbell. I explained the situation to her and asked her not to open the door. She said she had to because she didn't want him to wake the neighbors. I watched her go, staying in her bedroom. He asked, "Is Mary there?" He must have decided to pretend to ask for someone when he realized I wasn't there alone. She responded, "There's no one here called Mary." He apologized and then left. I breathed a sigh of relief and watched him through the window as he left. As he was walking, he turned around and I had the unfortunate opportunity to meet his eyes once more. He scowled at me through the glass. I shuddered. The next day, Jane told me about all the dodgy things and crimes that happened in that area. Turns out it wasn't a particularly safe area. After that, I only ever went out during the day. I thankfully never saw that guy again, but sometimes I wonder what could have happened if Jane wasn't there that night. Number 3. So some of you may have seen my post from last year in this subreddit, from when my ex-boyfriend left me alone in a sketchy part of Sacramento without locking the door. Needless to say, my taste in men hasn't gotten much better since then. So the other day I swiped this pretty cool dude on Tinder named Gabe. He adds me on Snapchat. We start talking a little bit. He decides to come pick me up and come smoke for a bit. I'm like, cool, yeah, whatever. In the Bay Area, smoking and driving is technically a date. But as soon as I get in the car, I get a really weird vibe. I don't know why. His smile was way too wide, or something like that. And he stared at me without blinking, just slightly long enough to make me uncomfortable. Also, he wouldn't tell me anything about himself. He just kept saying, "Oh, I make money doing this and that, whatever I can." And he would refer to all females as bitches. Major red flag. Well, after a couple of blunts, I'm starting to get tired. And I'm like, "So you want to drive me home?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure, I just got to stop by the grocery store for a few things." And I said, "Okay." So we get to the grocery store by my house, because we're still in my neighborhood. By this time it's pretty dark, but there are some lights on in the parking lot. After about 5 minutes of sitting there, while he's typing on his phone, I get kind of curious and look at the reflection of the driver's side window to see if I can read his text. I could. It read, "Yeah, I got her." Sitting in the Lucky's parking lot, I immediately went numb from head to toe. I decided I had to do something fast, because I don't know who he's texting or why he's telling them where we are. I start to notice things, like even though there's people near us, they're still kind of far away, about 25 to 30 feet, and I almost started to panic. He didn't notice anything though, so I asked, "Aren't you going to go inside?" And he says, "Yeah, just a second." I'm making a list of all the stuff I need. I almost shit my pants. I could obviously see the texting app still open in the reflection of the window. He was lying. I immediately grabbed my bag and bolted out of the car, started walking toward the grocery store, almost running. He said, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Tried to grab my bag, but I just made a direct beeline for the lighted entrance of the store. I made it into the store and looked out the window to see him driving around the parking lot, talking on the phone, waving his hands around. Seconds later, he peeled out of the parking lot and almost hit another car. I called my mom to have her pick me up, and when I got home, he had unmatched me from Tinder and blocked me on Snapchat without saying anything. I'm not sure what your plan was, Gabe, but I'm also glad I never found out. Let's not meet ever again. And frankly, I'm probably done dating too. Thank you so much for listening, guys. If you liked the video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe if you haven't already to the Sinful Society. Please feel free to keep sending your scary stories to my email. If your story hasn't been featured yet on a video, don't worry, it will in the near future. Thanks again for all the love and support in each and every day that you guys give me. Until the next video, stay sinful.